So I'm Dr. George Lockwood, and I'm on the executive board of the International Society of Schema Therapy, and I'm talking today with Dr. Joan Farrell and Ida Shaw, who are the co-developers of an important new approach to group schema therapy of borderline personality disorder, which has exploded on the scene over the past several years. And so there's an intensive research on the approach and refinements and developments underway. And a book just published on the borderline personality disorder, the group schema therapy for BPD, published by Wiley. And Joan and Ida are going to be giving a pre-conference workshop at the 5th ISST World Congress to be held this year in New York City, May 17th through the 19th. And so what I'd like to do today is to talk to you both to get a little bit of a preview of the material that you'll be covering in that. It's on reparenting and group schema therapy. And then if we have time after that to talk a little bit about the symposia that you'll be involved in, as there'll be a couple of symposia that are focused on group schema therapy as well in the conference. So if you want to start, Joan and Ida, and talk a little bit about the workshop that you'll be doing.
Sure.
Okay.
Well, the workshop is focusing, as you said, on limited reparenting in group, and probably that's one of the aspects of schema therapy, which was developed, of course, for individuals, that changes the most, because rather than an only child, you have an entire family of 8 or more people to reparent. And so something that we realized early on we had to figure out was how we could stay connected to all of the group members at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Because that was something we observed. We've both done a lot of group therapy of various kinds over the 30 some years we've been practicing. And something we noticed was it was always the borderline patient who ran out of the group. He had no idea, didn't look like anything had happened. And later on, what they said was some version of, we felt invisible.
Mm-hmm.
And that's such an issue with borderline patients that we knew it was very important to stay connected in some way. So we developed this idea of having a co-therapist team who alternated a focus on the group members versus leading some of the work.
Mm-hmm.
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. So one of us would lead a discussion or actually do a piece of work, while the other would really focus on staying connected with the other members of the group. And it's interesting, even when we thought they were not paying attention or they were somewhat detached, at the end of the group they would say, "You looked at me 28 times today."
Uh-huh.
So we did find out that staying connected was very, very important, and it would be a major task for only one therapist to do.
Mm-hmm.
At a time.
At a time.
Right, right.
Because ideally, we want to have 2 equal therapists who are alternating playing the role of focusing on attachment versus playing an active role in the work.
Mm-hmm.
And I think one thing that we really hope to convey at the convention is that every intervention that we do in group has a reparenting quality.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we do demonstrate that in the work we do.
You want to give some examples of that, of the kinds of things that you would be focusing on if you're, in a way, it's a content process emphasis. I mean, you're both doing both, but there's a relative emphasis on that. And what kinds of things might you be focusing on in terms of the person who's doing the therapy, the content of it, and what kinds of things might you be doing and focusing on or thinking about in your own mind when you're attending to the connection?
Well, you do that particularly well. There's a lot of nonverbal aspect to it. Some of it is just making genuine eye contact, not just a kind of scanning, but making that moment of, eye contact deliberately with the patient and, smiling at them or acknowledging them in some way.
Hmm.
Or simply passing around to the other members a rolled up piece of fleece that they can unroll and connect with each other and then with the next person, so that we have a connection even through just either a piece of fleece or a towel or a string, just so that they know they matter.
And that we
Hmm.
see them. And
Hmm.
this is kind of an important point because in training, something we realized was that we do this non-verbally. So the connection can be affirmed, but it doesn't disrupt the rest of the process of the group.
Hmm.
And in training, what people assume to do is to ask the person something like, "Are you okay?" or "What's going on?"
Hmm.
Which typically, in particular with borderline patients, does two things. One, it disrupts the rest of the group.
Hmm.
And number two, it usually makes them detach more. And
Hmm.
actually, a third thing is if they don't detach more, you're likely to get a manifestation of a coping mode and that takes the group in an entirely different direction. And you lose the overall connection that everyone has around the content topic you were addressing.
Yeah, it's interesting. So you have these other channels sort of weaving in multiple dimensions, but the other implicit dimension, it's almost, as you describe it, it's like someone talking and then the other person holding the group, like a group hug implicitly through all these other processes that are going on. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Exactly.
yeah.
Exactly. I'll give somebody a thumbs up, or I'll bend forward in my chair and, you know,
Uh-huh.
uh, listen, give them a signal,
Uh-huh.
and
Yeah.
it's those little things that are really kind of playful,
Uh-huh.
but it gives the patients or the clients a sense that, again, that they matter and we notice them.
Yeah.
And that they're
Yeah.
not invisible, that they're not abandoned. Because again, with our group of patients, and I think this is also true for avoidant PD, um, if they're too silent over a time, they really start to kind of amplify whatever schema is getting triggered. I mean, if it's abandonment or defectiveness or social isolation, all those
Hmm.
things in silence, disconnected from the group, seem to just get bigger.
Uh-huh. Yeah. So they just sink further into that.
Yeah.
I was thinking of the right hemisphere, left hemisphere, and that item, what you're talking about, a lot of communication is happening simultaneously through a signal, through a gesture, through a tone, while they're simultaneously processing with the content. So there's an integration then of that whole self, of the feeling, holistic aspects along with the content and making sense of what's going on or moving it forward in terms of content and all that interweaving of those dimensions. It's
Hmm.
yeah.
Very
Well,
much.
yeah, and also as parents of this family of the group, we're also trying to weave together the group members. As
Hmm.
I was said, it might
Yeah.
literally be with a fleece or a kind of cat's cradle thing of yarn, but it's also them noticing, say, another group member who's kind of disconnected and moving over to sit by them. It's the idea of kind of developing a family that's very
Hmm.
connected as the safe place to do this tough emotional work in.
Yeah. That's an interesting thing because we've had the outcome studies on individual schema therapy of borderline personality disorder and the kind of effects of that. And both of you have developed a randomized control trial of the group schema therapy of BPD, which is very effective. And when you think, what are your current thoughts about the power of the group and the family and the power of the individual, sort of the parent-child connection and how those interplay? Because both seem to be, the group process in itself seems to be quite important and powerful when you think about a healthy family. So it's a healthy parenting in the context of a healthy family. And what are your thoughts about that?
Well, I think looking back at it, some of the things that we notice, one of them is the sense of belonging.
Hmm.
It's tough in individual therapy. You can have a connection, but belonging seems to come more from the larger group, and
Hmm.
the group is a closer analog of the original family, where they either had traumatic experiences or missed critical emotional learning experiences that are necessary to be a healthy adult.
Hmm.
So we think the most important thing really is that the group sets the best stage for um, providing these healing early learning experiences of being accepted as you are, of getting support and acknowledgement
Hmm.
and room to play, all those things that they
Hmm.
didn't get in their childhood environments.
Hmm.
We always saw the deficit, a major deficit in with BPD patients as missing these early emotional learning experiences. And at the time we started in the second half of the 80s, there really wasn't technology within cognitive therapy or psychodynamic therapy to provide these early learning experiences in a very quick way.
Hmm.
And so the group really, we found, is probably the ideal place to give them opportunities for this emotional learning.
Hmm. Yeah, so it's real time and direct experience and not imagined, or
Yeah.
the therapist trying to play different roles. It's an actual
Mhm.
like sibling-like person. And I guess the other thing too is that within individual schema therapy, there's a translation from things going well in the session to the real world, but you
Mhm.
don't have to try to bridge it. It's there already. The group process is the bridge, and they're learning things that are going to be translating out into new kinds of relationships and finding
Mhm.
a sense of belonging in addition to that initial secure attachment then with the
Mhm.
therapist.
Yeah, I think in the group format, we really do take advantage of the therapeutic, uh, what would you say, experiences, um, things like vicarious
Mhm.
learning.
Mhm.
Um, Especially when dealing with difficult modes, working through the difficult modes. One patient will see that nothing bad happened when another individual yelled or screamed,
Mm-hmm.
and or even had a disagreement, and they can learn that just by seeing that. Wow, they were still accepted.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, you can, and you must take advantage of situations like that
Mhm.
and really expound on that to help bring about healing.